Just a quick thing about myself. I guess I am pseudo-clergy because I help conduct Friday Islamic services down in Tribeca, which is there's a mosque down there about 10 blocks up from the World Trade Center. I'm an American Muslim of part Afghani extraction, and I was on duty in a New York City emergency room on 9/11. One of my best friends was actually in charge of the rescue and resuscitation effort at Ground Zero, so I tried to meet up with him shortly after the makeshift hospital was set up at the Stuyvesant, which is now the new Stuyvesant High School, about a couple of blocks up, and that's where we sat and waited, and as most of you know, nothing really occurred. I did treat some of the wounded just from dust exposure, and a lot of psychological trauma that day as well, which continues till now. I'm also a professor of emergency medicine at a New York City Medical College. And I've been teaching physicians from day one out of med school for the past 10 or 11 years now how to diagnose, the art of reasoning. When you have a given set of data, what is your diagnosis? And I can't help but say that any activist that neglects 9/11 truth seriously needs to have his her diagnostic skill examined, because this is, as Nick says, it's one of the biggest issue that confronts us. And the way I analogize it, it's like going to a doctor and having him treat your cough and sort of just neglecting the cancer that's been growing in your lung for the past, 2 terms now. That's what's been growing in there, and you just can't do it. It's not honest. And I helped found one of the organizations called Muslims, Jews, and Christians for 9/11 Truth, because I do come from a spiritual, faith-based perspective. And in it, thank you. And in it, I sort of write a scathing commentary. All of you know the psychology of suppression of truth. We had Lieutenant Colonel Bowman talk about why people will suppress the truth to maintain their hegemony in whatever fashion. But there's also the psychology of avoiding the truth. And that's a lot more subtle, and that's trickier to deal with. And you need to, we all, as people who are sort of given credence to 9/11 truth, need to understand how to deal with people who avoid the truth. There's all sorts of reasons, different reasons people avoid the truth. Some are complicit, and some are very innocent. And it's hard to sort of wake people up sometimes, because the modern corporate-based media has done such a great job conditioning people into thinking certain ways about things. So that's another thing to keep in mind. As far as the statistics from New York 9/11 Truth go, I can tell you from traveling the third world, I'm from the third world, that everyone I talk to in casual conversation, even in Europe, be it North Africa as well, the Middle East, Pakistan, India, when the subject of 9/11 comes up, they're like, oh yeah, we know that was an inside job. What don't the Americans understand? It's surprising. I mean, talk to a cab driver, if you will. I'm serious, they will tell you, yes, it's obvious. Now, this is the reason why it's obvious. Let me tell you the reason why it's obvious. Because in the third world, the sleaze of governance is a lot more transparent. So people sort of expect their officials to act in certain ways, and they just kind of put up with it, and that's the way it goes. Here, the glass is a lot thicker. All right, the conditioning is a lot heavier. So that's something you got to work through. But all throughout history, and I'm a history major as well, every single president, historically speaking, and Faiz does a great job in his book at the last chapter, the president is that governments lie. All right? There's a famous Columbia professor of school of journalism who said the first thing to his journalist students, governments lie. It's the first thing. What don't people understand? So that's the thing I want you to keep in mind. The other thing I want to share with you tonight, this is kind of like therapeutic for me too. And I was last minute add on to this. I was on my way to Pennsylvania, and I just wanted to stop and be with you tonight, because right after 9/11, I was asked to do a lot of clergy interfaith memorial service work, and I did. Okay, and I can't anymore. And I can't anymore not because I don't sympathize with those who have lost on that day. I can't anymore because, as somebody who claims to be striving for truth, and truth, remember, metaphysically speaking, is a divine principle. You can't talk about 9/11 and not mention 9/11 truth. I can't do that, okay? And a lot of my colleagues in the religious positions here, they just won't approach that issue. And I can't in good conscience get up there and talk about 9/11 and then just not start educating people about 9/11 truth, so I don't go to these anymore. Okay, so I feel like here is the reality check, and then to go back out there and sort of deal with the delusion. The other thing I want to mention to you is during the Q&A, I am very familiar with what is called the militant Islamic networks and the ideology that has been consciously fostered by Western corporate interests into the third world. Okay, there's a big marriage, a continuous marriage between militant Islamic ideologies and Western interests. And I sympathize with those people who are authentic followers of other faith traditions because they see their religions hijacked in all sorts of ways as well, whether it be use of the term Christian rhetoric or the Jewish rhetoric. You know, ideologies get co-opted by criminal agendas. That's the way they work. The last thing I'm going to leave you with, the second to last thing, don't get caught up in this whole notion of nation states. Okay, when it comes to things of this nature, there is no such thing as nation state. And I don't mean to contradict what Lieutenant Colonel Bowman was saying. Okay, there is such a thing as government. But when it comes to these agendas, these transcend nation state. Okay, these are big corporate interests that are transnational, and they play ball with one another. There's no such thing as a Saudi nation. There's a royal sleazy family there, and there's no such thing as the American nation when it comes to 9/11 because there's a sleazy mob, if you will, in the White House that co-ops its Washington D.C. and actualizes agendas of Wall Street. I mean, that's the way things have worked all throughout history. Okay. Last thing I'll leave you with, the term jihad. Now I have to add this in because I'm an American Muslim. You know, the term jihad is something that the corporate media likes to use to spook you guys. Jihad is jihad. But I can tell you right now what you guys are engaged in here tonight has been called by the Prophet Muhammad the most exalted jihad. Okay, that is speaking out for truth in the face of oppression. Alright? So if we're all engaged in jihad, take that